I'm going to share with you something today which, for some of you, may be life-changing, revelatory. For some of you, will merely be a clarification which may be useful to you. There are we exist on multiple levels. We exist both as social beings and as spiritual beings. And the rules for each are different. And if you don't know that, then you'll end up being frustrated. I would say that most often what I think happens is that people fail to understand that they are spiritual beings and that the spiritual reality has a different set of rules than does the social reality. Uh, Sometimes it happens that people fail, they realize fully that they are spiritual beings and they have a fairly good awareness of the rules of the spiritual reality, but they don't uh, understand or accept the social the social or material realm, and or they don't understand that there are different sets of rules that apply there. And even though I think that happens less often, it does sometimes happen. I've observed that. Uh, but when there is a failure to understand that there are these two different realms, two different sets of rules, then people end up being frustrated, and this ends up resulting in a sense of disempowerment, um, a sense of lack, a sense of uh, sometimes um, there can be a lot of emotions that I mean, I'd say mostly, usually there are a lot of emotions that are involved in this, which are not entirely pleasant. Anger, discouragement, disappointment, fear, anxiety, and so forth. And people have different strategies for dealing with this. Some people double down on what's not already working. They just try to exert their will with more fervor, thinking somehow that's going to do it. You know, if you just try harder, then that will work. And doesn't work. So and and other people will just get depressed, and some people will become cynical. You know, there are a lot of different strategies that people use, but none of them actually give the results because what is really going on, the underlying problem in this case is what we call ignorance. Just not understanding, not having awareness of what's really going on. So if you don't understand the rules, you can't really play. By the way, I've told this story before. It's not a good story, but I'm going to tell it again anyway. Um, and I don't tell the story well, so it's going to make it doubly or triply uh, not entertaining to you. But when I was in high school, uh, well, I went to a nerdy high school. I went to a special nerdy high school where I had the opportunity to play sports because at the school that I in my hometown was uh, they were there was no chance in hell that I was going to play sports on the high school team. Not that, and I didn't want to, uh, because I was not an athletic kid, and it was very competitive. It was very competitive athletically at my home in my hometown. But when I went to this nerdy high school, then there was an opportunity to play sports because it was nerdy and there was not a lot of athleticism there. Still, I was the worst on the team. I played soccer for one season, which was more than enough. And The thing about it though was that I didn't know the rules. So there I was playing soccer and I did not know the rules. I mean, I understood generally speaking that, you're not allowed to touch the ball with the hands and you're supposed to run around and kick the ball and try to get the ball into the opponent's net. But beyond that, I did not understand the rules. So that did not contribute to m- any that was not helpful for me. On top of the fact that I was not athletic and I would get a stitch in my side when I would run, and I was the slowest one on the team. And I didn't know any of the skills or the drills or any of the things on top of that, but I also didn't know the rules. So if you don't know the rules, it's not going to go particularly well. And this seems to be true just broadly in life. If you don't know the rules, then you can't expect to succeed. If you happen to succeed uh, in terms of getting an outcome that you want, on rare occasion, it's highly unlikely, so unlikely as to be basically impossible that you would then be able to repeat that. Because if you don't know the rules, you're just not going to be able to do it. So, uh, good news is that you can learn the rules. So I'm probably the wrong person. No, I was going to say I'm the wrong person to learn the rules of society from, but that's probably not true. I don't give myself credit. I'm fairly well socialized. I just don't. It's not my thing. But I do know the rules of society. So, but it's not something that for the most part, I'm not particularly interested in that. Although there are a few aspects of that that I do have interest in terms of skillful communication. I think skillful communication is a very useful thing. Uh, but I'm not going to focus on that today. Today, what I'd like to focus on are the rules of the spiritual realm, of the spiritual reality, because I think this is where most people end up getting stuck because they try to apply the rules of society to the spiritual reality, and it does not give the results. So, uh, so think about this. We all were born, unless Jesus is here. Uh, no, so we were all born to our parents, and um, we were uh, taught very early on, from the very beginning, probably even before we were born, to be honest. While we were still in utero, we were taught, we were trained, we were conditioned to be good little boys and good little girls. And some of us complied better than others. But if you're not in prison, you've learned well enough, right? Because if you don't learn well enough, you end up in prison. So the fact that you're here probably hopefully means you're not in prison. So you learned well enough the rules of society, how to be a good little boy and a good little girl, and you've carried that on. Even if you consider yourself a rebel, you might say, "Oh, no, no, I'm not good at all. I'm bad. I'm a rebel." Yeah, well, first of all, you have to know the rules to break them. So you learn the rules. And if you're a rebel, then you're not that rebellious. Sorry to break it to you. And and in any case, um, you're still reacting. The rebel is still reacting to the rules. So the rebel still has the rules installed, still operating from those rules, but then is rebelling against them, reacting to them. So the conditioning of society is in you. You can't help it, and it's not entirely bad. It gets a bad rap. I give it a bad rap, but you got to get along well enough. And there's some important things there for us. So, um, but we learned, to be good. So how do you be good? Well, you raise your hand before you speak, you take your turn, you let other people go, oh, you first, you open the door for other people, you consider other people, you say thank you and you're welcome and I'm sorry, and you do all the things, right? You know all the rules. And these rules are so, the conditioning is so deeply ingrained. You don't have to think about it, and you're not even consciously aware of 99.999% of how you're playing by the rules. But now notice how. Oh, and here's another one, just to throw this into the mix. Playing fair, right? Being fair. Fair is a fair is an important rule for society. You're supposed to be fair. So we think we make the mistake, and even if you don't think that this is true, just consider it. Just consider it with an open mind, and look to see how this might be true for you in your life. Because when you see how this is true for you, in big ways, small ways, medium ways, obvious ways, non-obvious ways. When you start to see how this is true for you, this can unlock a lot because what we try to do is we try to play by those same rules in the spiritual realm. So, how many times have you found yourself, uh, in a difficult situation where you didn't know what to do, some sort of almost desperate sort of situation. I don't mean like acutely desperate, but I mean more like in a chronic way where you've been trying and trying and trying and trying, and you've done all the things that you know how to do, and you still are not getting the result that you want, and you're in pain. Not necessarily physically, although possibly physically, but mentally, emotionally, you're in pain. And you get to that point and you say, I don't know what to do, and you start praying. You ever been in that situation? Sure you have, right? And what do you do? What do you pray? You say, God, I've been so good. God, I don't understand. I'm such a good person. I do all the right things. I'm so nice. I'm kind and considerate. And, I open the doors for people and I give generously and I do all the. Why is it, God, that I don't get what I want? Why am I suffering in this way? We're trying to play the spiritual reality by the rules of society, but it doesn't work that way. God does not care if you're nice, because nice is not God's idea. Nice is an idea of society. God doesn't care if you're considerate. That's not God's idea. That's society's idea. Fair? God doesn't care about fair. God doesn't know about fair. That's society's idea. So we project these ideas. We make God into a person in our minds. We imagine God as a person just like us, who's conditioned by society, who has society's ideas. And we say, well, God, you're the big guy. You're the big person. You're, you're this all powerful person. And I'm asking you, I'm appealing to you, because you should know about all these same ideas that I know about. You should be conditioned in the same way. You should be just like me, except for bigger and more powerful and, omniscient and all of those things. So we're trying to communicate in that way, and it doesn't work because it's a different level of consciousness entirely. You might as well be speaking Greek because it doesn't, and I'm not picking on Greek in particular. I'm just saying a language. You might as well be speaking a language that you don't understand, or that the one who's listening can't understand because it makes no sense. It makes sense to you because that's how you've been conditioned, but it doesn't make any sense at that higher level, at the spiritual realm, because those are totally different set of rules. So, uh, we and we must succeed spiritually. We must. You can't be really satisfied and fulfilled if you're only materially and socially successful, right? You can have all of the money and all of the houses and the spouses, and you can have all of the adoration and the power in this world, and it won't really fulfill you. And you can know that's true first and foremost because you can just imagine it and look in your own heart and tell the truth about it. You can just know that it's not so. And you can also look out there in the world and see all the people who have all the things. And you can say, look, you can just notice, well, it's kind of obvious, they're not really fulfilled because they're always sticking their noses in other people's businesses and trying to get more from life, trying to squeeze out more. I don't have enough yet. I need more. 100 billion isn't enough. I need 200 billion. 200 billion isn't enough. I need a trillion. A trillion won't be enough either. And it's never enough. Not that those things might not be nice. I'm not suggesting there's any particular virtue in being poor or, having no teeth or whatever. I mean, like, that's not necessarily virtuous, but it's just that having the perfect smile and the six pack abs and you're gonna live forever. You're gonna have all of the money and all of the things. And it's like, that's not gonna do it for you, as nice as it might be. So, what I'd like to share with you is some of the rules, principles, really. Uh, so this is hopefully I've set it up well so that this makes sense, that you're playing a spiritual game. Oh, well, let me say one thing before I get into some of the rules. Because I know some people are gonna balk at this. Some people are gonna say, well, that's there are no rules. That's bullshit. Uh, and there's a level at which that is true. There's a level at which that is true. And this, but th this is something where you have to be really, really clear about what level you're operating from, and if you are thinking, then you are not operating from that level. If you are in the least way conceiving of yourself as being something, you are not operating from that level. So it is true that there is only one reality, which is consciousness, and consciousness has no rules to it whatsoever. There are no rules that apply to consciousness because consciousness is the totality. You can't get outside of consciousness to uh, govern it. So there can't be any rules that apply to consciousness. Consciousness has no form, it has no substance, it has no attributes. There's nothing that can be governed. There's nothing that is outside of it. This is similar. I think it might have been last week. Maybe it wasn't. I admit it was in recently. Oh, it was in the living wholeness class last week. I was pointing out how everything is included in wholeness. You can't get outside of wholeness. So wholeness and consciousness are synonyms. You can't get outside of it. If you if you can get outside of it, that's not it, right? That That's like your idea of consciousness. If you can conceive of it, that's not consciousness. Consciousness, if we're talking about pure consciousness, consciousness is not conceivable. You can't get outside of it. So at and it's possible to function from there, but there's no one functioning. There's no one who's doing it. So if you have any sense of yourself as being something, you're not operating from that level. So so there are no rules that actually apply to you at the highest level as you truly are as consciousness. No rules. But uh as if you conceive of yourself, if you have any preferences, then you're not operating from that level. So then there are rules. Because if you have preferences and you want to actually you have let's say volition, you want something, you have desire, you want there's direction, there's a sense of wanting to move, wanting some kind of movement, then there are rules that govern that. There are rules that you want to know about so that you can get from where you are to where you want to be. Because again, if you don't know those rules, you're really going to struggle. Now, I'm not going to, I want to be clear that I am uh, not some sort of, great, I don't have some sort of great mastery over these rules. I'm not a, uh, master player of the game or anything like that. But I, so I'm, but I have some knowledge of these rules that I can share with you. And these are not what I'm going to share with you today. By no stretch of the imagination is intended to be a comprehensive uh, description of all of the rules, but I want to give you some of the key ones that I know a bit about. And so we'll start with one that I talk about a lot, which is the uh, law of attention. So it's not about how much you want something. A lot of people make this mistake. They think that because this is a popular idea, uh, like if you can just get a strong enough emotion, like if you desire it enough, then that somehow is going to be the driving factor that's going to, attract to you what you desire. And I think that it may be that sometimes when people are uh, activating that strong feeling, they may be inadvertently making use of the law of attention, and that may give them an outcome. But I think that that's a byproduct, and it's not because of the intensity of the emotion. It's really about this law of attention. So the law of attention is whatever you put your attention on, that's where your energy goes. Now, that is if you my suggestion to you is that you actually explore that, uh, be curious about that and notice how is that operating in your life. My proposal is that it is, I mean, it's always active and it is governing everything in your life. And if you, so you could start from the assumption that it's not true, and you could look to disprove it. And uh, that's sort of like this sort that's sort of the scientific method, right? Uh, you want to try to disprove it. I think that the problem with that approach is that if you then you are actually using the law of attention against your best interests, in the sense that if that's your bias, if you're trying to prove that it's not true, then that's where your attention is subtly directed, is looking for how it's not true. And so that's going to very significantly color your experience. So what I recommend is that just be curious. So just let's take a moment together right now. You could notice uh, just what is the just notice whatever comes to mind in terms of uh, this idea that whatever you put your attention on, that's where your energy goes. And wherever your energy goes, that's what becomes more substantial. The more energy that something has, because everything it is that is the substance. Substance is energy. So whatever, whether we're talking about material substance or immaterial substance, it's all energy. So the more energy that is given to something, the more substantial it becomes, the more substance it has. And then this will obviously then materialize and manifest in various ways in your experience. So just notice whatever it is that comes to mind, and uh, just allow yourself to just take a moment and just be open and receptive to gaining greater clarity about that for yourself. So you don't have to think a lot. You don't have to try and uh, analyze it, but you could instead just be receptive with this intention. So the intention is to have more clarity about how this principle is actually playing out in your life. And even if there are doubts that come, that's totally fine. So this isn't about trying to get rid of doubts. It's just we can invite the doubts. So if there are doubts, they're perfectly welcome. It's just allow those doubts to be welcomed with the intention of greater clarity regarding how this principle is operating in your life. Now, this can open up more questions than it answers. We're usually accustomed to trying to answer questions. And because we think that if we can answer the questions, then that's going to give us something that we want. And uh, just notice that in your life, however many questions you've had answered, has that given you what you wanted ultimately? Uh, it's true on a certain level that if you're going to operate a machine and you have a question about how to operate the machine and you get that question answered, that could allow you to be more uh, potentially more skillful in operating the machine than if you didn't have that question answered. So that's true at that level. but it also creates a kind of uh, end or a finality to something or it closes something that's really open. So the approach that I'm proposing here is different than that. It's complementary. It's not either or. You can still use the other approach, but I'm just offering this other approach, which you might find allows you to receive much more without having to grasp it, without having to try and possess it. And it invites this ongoing, open exploration and curiosity, which can continue to illuminate your mind and your experience so that you can continue to grow that clarity about how it is that your attention is a powerful force which governs your experience. For example, you might notice how much of the time uh, are you focused on what you don't want? Turns out to be a lot of the time that you focus on what you don't want. And then becoming aware that you have a tendency to focus on what you don't want, what comes up next? For a lot of people, what comes up next is now there'll be another layer of now that's the new problem. So it's more of what you don't want. Now the tendency to focus on what you don't want is just yet another problem. In other words, another thing that you don't want, which you then might have a tendency to focus on. Oh no, what will I do about that? Then you try to come up with solutions to that. So you're trying to, so it's like it poses now a question, what do I do about it? And then you try to answer that, try to come up with solutions, strategies. Oh, uh, I'll, I'll uh, recite affirmations. Oh, I'll do Wim Hof breathing. Oh, I'll go on a raw vegan diet. Oh, I'll, whatever it is, it comes up with these ideas. And what you could do instead is just allow that and just notice what is, and just with this intention of being aware, of being, uh, uh, having this clarity growing, regarding the, this principle of attention, how it is working in your life, and how you could actually have a different relationship, one that's more empowering for you. And you might notice that as you just allow for these things to surface without needing to grasp at them or push them away or fix them, that actually something else starts to reveal itself. And you might start to discover that what it is that reveals itself is more of what you actually want. Because what you might find that starts to reveal itself is uh, perhaps clarity. If the intention is an intention of clarity, then clarity may very well begin to reveal itself with greater clarity. And this uh, if and what I'm sharing here is somewhat subtle, so it might take some uh, consistent exploration, persistence with this to really start to understand. It's the wrong word, but to have some sense of what it is that I'm pointing to here. But you might notice that, see, I propose this intention, which is to allow for this clarity to be revealed. And so we started with that in, here in this little segment where I suggested that. And then uh, through that intention, things will move. There's movement that occurs. And that movement can can look like many things. So at a relatively subtle level, it can look like thoughts, mental images. So mental activity, mental content, uh, perceptions of things. And I was suggesting some of those possibilities might be things like having the awareness of, oh, my attention has gone to what I don't want. And then, oh, now that I'm aware that my attention has gone to what I don't want, how can I fix that problem? And so we have a choice though. Do we stay with the original intention or do we go off on this tangent, which is really just more of the familiar habitual conditioning of what I don't want? And if you allow yourself just to remain open, then you're allowing for that intention to actually continue to receive that attention. So if the intention is to allow the clarity, then we can just continue to allow that clarity, whatever it is that surfaces. So we can acknowledge, notice, and allow. And through that, there's just a remaining with the intention of the greater clarity regarding how this principle is operating in our lives. And you might notice then that it actually really truly does work because there's this greater clarity that emerges. Now, if you try to latch on to that, if you try to grasp it, if you say, okay, now I need to understand it, I need to be able to, you know, do something with this. Because I know myself, I know that, I have these certain problems and I need to solve the problems. And I think this might be the answer to the problems. If only I could grasp it. I got this dawning clarity and now I need to do something with it so I can fix my problems. Well, where's your attention going now? You see, then your attention is going again to what you don't want, which is perfectly fine. But you could just notice that and you could allow. And through that, there's a continuation with the intention of allowing this clarity. So whatever comes up, it's like uh it's like if you have a, a if you have a glass of that has mud in it and you have put it under running water. If and let's say the mud has settled to the bottom. At first, the running water churns up the mud, and now the glass is filled with this muddy water that's just churning around. And you might think to yourself, "Oh, what have I done?" Now it's before it was just this mud at the bottom, but now the whole glass is filled with mud. It's all churning around. This is not what I wanted at all. I wanted clear water. So if you lose sight of the intention and you get distracted by, oh no, this is what I don't want. See, then your attention is going to what you don't want. And you might say, "Oh, this was the wrong thing. I need a different strategy." So you take the water out, you take the glass away from the running water, and you come up with try to come up with a different strategy. But if you were to leave the glass under the running water, after some time, what starts to happen? The water is overflowing, and eventually that muddy water, that murky water, is replaced with the clear running water. So then you've achieved what it is that you set out to achieve. But there's this intermediary or intermediate step in which the there's a choice that has to be made. Where will your attention go? Will it go to what's familiar, the old habits, trying to solve the problems, to what you don't want? Or will you remain with what it is that you're choosing? So, and this is this is something I find for myself over and over and over again, and I think that this is true broadly for people, is that we make this mistake in our lives. We set an intention, and momentarily, that's where our attention goes. This is what I want. But as soon as we've done that, the energy starts to go to that. So our energy is now going to what we want, and that starts to produce change. And that change it brings about it stimulates all kinds of movement, all kinds of activity, all kinds of sensory experience. So we might start to think things, feel things, have stimulation of mental images, memories, projections, all kinds of things. And and it's like a cleansing process. It's like all of the the what uh all of what makes up what we don't want is being loosened and starting to be uh liberated. The cat is about to knock things down. Come here. I have things precariously up there on the shelf. I should address that. Um, so as you notice that there's movement, and your nervous system will tend to interpret that movement as a threat. Oh no, this is a problem. And then the old habit of how do I solve this problem comes up. And there's the moment of choice. What will you do? Will you will you abandon this very tender young intention? You've started to give some energy to it, but it's still uh very tender. It's like you've got this tiny little seed, and you've the seed when it begins this process of germination, it's vulnerable. Before that, it's got its armor, it's protected. But when it begins the germination process, then in order to be able to sprout, it has to let go of a lot of its protection. And so it's in a vulnerable state. And so, you can take see plenty of seeds, they can survive very harsh conditions. You can throw them on the ground, and they'll stay there all winter, and they're perfectly fine. And and then they'll germinate in the spring. But if you take the same seeds and you begin the process of germination and then you throw them on the ground, they will not survive over the winter because now they're vulnerable. And so we start with all these intentions. They're like seeds, and we give a little bit of energy to them, a little bit of attention to them, and it's like the germination process. It's now in this vulnerable state, and if we abandon it, it's not going to survive. So then we have to start over again if we're serious about that intention. So, uh, staying with that intention long enough, giving enough energy to it that it then becomes uh, self-sustaining is important, but most of us don't do that. Uh, we revert back to our habits. We revert back to what we don't want instead of staying with what we do want. Now, this can happen on many different time scales. So, uh, I'm sure some of you have experienced this where there's this idea of, just be with your emotions, for example. So sometimes we have emotions that we find to be challenging, and we might be in the habit of trying to avoid them, trying to distract ourselves. And we get to a point and we realize, well, this is not what I want at all. It's painful. It hurts me a lot. And so we want to make a change, and somebody says, well, just be with your emotions. So we might find, we might try that. And maybe we have some success with that. You might, like, I can't believe it. I can't, this thing that's been haunting me, that I've been so afraid of for years, maybe decades, maybe. When I'm just with it, when I'm just present, when I just allow, even sometimes just for a second, then there's a release. And that's so much nicer. So if you have that kind of experience, then you know that, what I'm describing here in terms of attention, if you're willing to allow for something to process uh, sufficiently, then it can get to its stage of self-sufficiency, whatever it is you want. So if you're feeling anger and you want peace, if you're willing just to have that intention and just be there, then what you were experiencing as the anger is is transformed into peace because you're using your attention to transform the energy. The energy has this one form, and you're using your attention to shift that energy to this other form. But how long does that take? It's variable. And so a lot of the time it takes a little longer than what we're willing to give. And so we again shift our attention back to what we don't want. So if you're feeling anger and you want peace instead, so you have that intention. The intention is, I want peace. I don't want this anger. I want peace. So you have that clarity of intention, but then and maybe somebody says, well, be with just be with and allow whatever it is here. Just remain open. Just allow yourself to just be as much at ease and open and receptive as possible. And as I said a moment ago, if it just so happens that this process only in this particular instance only requires a second or half a second or 5 seconds, and you have the capacity and the willingness to allow for that long and stay with the intention of peace, then everything is transformed. But a lot of the time, what happens is we have that intention, we feel anger, we have the intention, I want peace instead. Oh, I remember there was that time when I was just with my emotion and I just allowed, and there was a transformation. Oh, I'll do that again. And we try to do that again. And then we're feeling all these uncomfortable things and all these mental images are coming up and these thoughts and all of this stuff is surfacing and maybe there's even things happening around us, not just inside of us. And we say, oh, enough, I can't believe all this is happening. This is not what I wanted. All this is so awful. Oh God, when will it leave me? When will I stop being angry? Can't, I can't stand it. I can't stand the anger any longer. And you see what happens? Your attention has gone back to what you don't want. And you're referring to, all of the past. Oh, all the times when I was angry. I can't stand it any longer. It's too much for me. When will it end? We're projecting into the future that it's going to continue. So it's very subtle how we are unconsciously utilizing this power of attention. And so a key to that I found for working with this power of attention in ways that are far more likely to result in what you want instead of what you don't want is to, number one, to be clear about your intention. So I I recommend uh that you like I usually do, I recommend that you get clear on what you want. And a couple of tips that I have for that. One is take a moment every day to ask yourself, what do I really want? And reflect on that with an open mind. So uh, being really receptive, because there's an intelligence in you beyond your conscious mind. So your conscious mind is just one part of you, and there's an intelligence in you that is vastly greater than your conscious mind, which includes your conscious mind. So I'm not excluding your conscious mind from that, but I'm just saying that your conscious mind is a tiny fraction of it. And but your conscious mind, most of the time, your conscious mind uh, pretends like it's God. It's like I'm the sole power in the universe, and or at least I'm the sole power in my universe, and I've got to figure it all out, which is extraordinarily stressful. But there's an intelligence in you vastly greater than that, and if you are willing to allow it, it can help you in ways that you can hardly even dream of. And one way to do that is just simply to ask it. You can just ask the intelligence in you anything and then receive. Receiving is important because if you ask, it's like, have you ever had somebody ask you a question and then they don't even wait for an answer? It's like clearly they're not really sincere if they're not waiting for the answer. But this is what we do a lot of the time. If we even have presence of mind to ask for whatever it is that we want, to ask for support, help, clarity about something, then we fail to actually receive the answer. Because the thing is, the answer is already there, but it's coming through on channels that you haven't been tuning into. So you have to be receptive that the asking the question is really about is still utilizing the power of attention. That's just you focusing your power of attention to to know this is what I want. Now you have to be open and receptive to allow for that intention to manifest, which it will through helping you, you will become tuned in to the answer. But uh, almost certainly it's not going to be in the on the station that you're habitually tuned to. So so you have to allow for that movement to take place within you. So that's one thing is I recommend asking every day, what do I really want? And you can think about that in terms of what is truly my truly meaningful for me, or what is my uh what is truly purposeful for me, or what is truly fulfilling for me? What is truly good for me? That's what I want. And uh so you can ask that and then be receptive. I have suggested many times, and I'll suggest again now, if you're really serious about it, then take a few minutes, 10 minutes, whatever is going to be doable for you and sustainable, and write the response without censoring. There, your conscious mind is going to be tempted to try and it will ask the question and then it will try and answer the question, which won't really be helpful. So instead, I recommend oh, being receptive and writing without censoring. Does not matter what it is that comes. It doesn't have to make sense to you. You might think that it's stupid. It might be gibberish. It might be the same word over and over and over and over, and the until something else comes up. It's not about it. There's the pressure. Relieve yourself of the pressure to perform. Uh, because it's if you have that, if you're putting that pressure on yourself to perform to get the answer, then that's going to keep you tuned to your habitual station, which is going to give you the same old, same old. You're asking the question, if you're sincere, then you've got to allow yourself to be receptive to the response, which is going to come through on a different channel. And uh, when it does, it's not likely that it's going to completely surprise you. It could, but it's unlikely because subconsciously you're aware of all of this. It's just that you haven't allowed it to surface consistently to your conscious mind. So this practice that I'm suggesting is one that allows it to surface to your conscious mind. So you can start to actually allow all of yourself to function in a holistic way. Um, so don't censor, don't judge, whatever it is, and you're not obligated to do anything with it. If something comes up and if you're writing and it's like, you know, uh, something that is completely offensive, amoral, whatever it is, you're not obligated to act on that. That's not the point. The point is to allow yourself to start to actually receive what's there. And some of what's there sometimes might not be so pretty. That's okay. Doesn't have to be. Remember, that's society's standards. Society's rules are have told you, this is good, that's bad. So you've got to shove away and compartmentalize what's bad, only let out what's good. And so there's a lot of stuff in there, and you got to be willing to allow for whatever's there to come out as it does. Don't be afraid of it. But when something of real clarity comes up, you'll know. So that's one thing is uh, to do that on a regular basis. And another thing is to you might have noticed there's a theme that's come up repeatedly here, which is this allowing, welcoming. Because so we have to invite, we have to ask, and then we have to allow and welcome. Both are necessary. And um, so we, that's like the basic process that I'm describing over and over in different ways, whether it's the setting of the intention of I want peace instead of anger, uh, or it's the asking of what do I really want? That's the setting of the intention. That's the asking. That's the uh, the first component. But then there's the second component, which is to welcome, to allow, to receive. And both are necessary because, as I said, we we even when we will get clarity of what we want, even when we set an intention which is wholesome and harmonious and aligned with our values, we rarely stay with it for long enough that it actually becomes something that is self-sustaining. And instead, it becomes just like that germinating seed that when we abandon it, it perishes. And so, to remain with it requires this second step that I'm describing, which is the receiving, welcoming, allowing step. And very few of us know how to do that with any level of skill whatsoever. I am still very much an amateur in that regard, but I have been very sincerely practicing that for uh, 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 almost 14 years now. And even though I'm still very amateur, it has made a tremendous difference in my life. And so know the power of it and I know how important it is. And it's very complementary to the first step as well. They're both complementary to one another because the more that you welcome, the more you allow, the more clarity you'll have regarding what to ask for, which then feeds into more ability to welcome and allow and receive. So it starts to form a virtuous cycle. Now, uh, probably this will not come as a surprise to you if you've been around uh, these parts for any amount of time. What I have found is extremely useful for cultivating this skill of welcoming and allowing is a combination or either or um, breath awareness and or active relaxation. So the way that I experience breath awareness and the way that I share about breath awareness, I think is somewhat unique. Uh, and so I just want to take a moment to describe that briefly. So breath awareness is pretty much just what that phrase would suggest. It's being aware of the breath. But there's nuance to that, which is where where the uh where the real wealth is. So if you really want to uh gain the riches that are available, and they are available, then this requires, and again, the same principle applies here. I hope you can see this is it's a recursive thing because principle of attention applies here too. The so on the surface, you can hear, oh, breath awareness. I already know about that. Uh, Joey says breath awareness is so useful and important, but I already know about it. I've already been there, done that, and I still have problems. Oh, see what happened there? Attention goes to, I tried it in the past to fix my problems. It didn't fix my problems. I still have problems. I need to fix those problems. So your attention goes to what you don't want. But here, if you are curious, if you're willing to, as they say, empty your bowl, if you are willing to come to this not knowing, and that's really the aim of the practice, to be honest, is just to not know, but to receive instead. So I don't know how I'm breathing. I don't know how I'm breathing. And there's that's like a double entendre. I don't know the manner in which I'm breathing. I'm not aware of that unless I actually give my attention to that with curiosity. I'm also not aware, or I don't know how I'm breathing in an even deeper sense. Like I don't know how breathing is even possible. There's a mystery here. So uh, I can't answer the question. It's not something that I'm going to be able to grasp and then do something with and say, okay, here's the right way to breathe. You know, do the 4-7-8 breath or whatever. Like it's not like that. It's not something where you're gonna get it and you're gonna say, okay, now I got it, and I'm gonna bring it back to the world and I'm gonna be the hero. I've got the answer. I've got it. I've got the fire. I'm gonna give it to humanity and where I'll be the hero. It's not like that. It's not, this is a different thing. There are parallels to the hero's journey, but this is not the hero's journey. This is a different thing. This is not knowing. So I don't know. So we could just start with admitting I don't know. Actually, I mean, could you just notice like, so apparently you're breathing, but you don't know the manner in which you're breathing. You haven't been aware of it. You haven't actually been aware of it. Could you become curious about that? And rather than trying to breathe, rather than trying to control the breath, could you allow the breath? So there's a mystery that's here, the mystery of breathing. It's not something you do. It's not an action of yours. It's a mystery that you're receiving. It's a mystery that you are, uh, there's a like a dance that's occurring. And could you just tune into that and allow that to occur with the intention? There's the intention again. See how it's recursive with the intention that it could be perhaps pleasurable. Now, notice if you have that intention, could could this breath be pleasurable? Well, now you have to be willing to receive it. You have to be willing to receive the pleasure of the breath. You can't do it. You really can't. You can't do pleasure. Pleasure is not a thing you can do. Pleasure is a thing that you can receive. And so, with that intention, could this breath be pleasurable? Let me now receive this breath in a pleasurable way. So, you can only have the intention and then receive, and have the intention and receive, and have the intention and receive. And as you continue in this way, as you continue to have the intention and receive, it just opens up. And it's not a linear process. Remember how many minutes ago I suggested that when you set an intention, that intention begins to get the energy. So there's a change that's occurring. And that starts to grow. And as that starts to grow, then there's a movement, there's a transformation that occurs. And as that transformation is occurring, your nervous system may well interpret some of the things that happen as threats. So there could be sensations, there could be mental images, there could be outer manifestations. Things can happen around you, you know, all kinds of things. And but then the question is, well, what do I really want? If you've gotten clarity about something, if you want something, if you want to experience the pleasure of the breath, if you want to be aware of the breath, if you want to discover something, if you have that curiosity, then whatever it is that surfaces, you can just allow, welcome, receive. Just keep coming back to that intention. And as you do, you'll notice things shift. So it can happen sometimes. You might even experience, you're like, wow, I'm experiencing pleasure. Who knew? And then all of a sudden something could come up. There could be some sensation or mental image, some thought says, oh no, I forgot about this. Oh, what are they thinking? Oh no, what about this bill? Oh no, I might be late for this or whatever. And it's like, okay, there it is. You can welcome it, allow it, receive it, be curious. It will come and go. It moves because it's been liberated. And so as you uh, explore this, it really is profoundly transformative, but it's not a it's something to explore ongoing. If you want the real benefits of it, it's something to explore consistently. Because if you just do it once, maybe you have a nice experience. More often than not, if a person does it once, they're like, whatever. Maybe a person has a really nice experience. You know, it could happen. You could explore this once. Maybe it's happened for somebody here just now. You know, you might have this experience and then you say, wow, what was that? Wow, what was that? You know, you had the intention to open to receive the pleasure and you had no idea that something like that could occur. You know, it's something totally different than what you're accustomed to. Totally different kind of pleasure. A very pleasant surprise. You know, you might, wow. And then, but, but so what? You know, a nice experience. It's just a nice experience. It's not really going to change your life. What changes your life is what you what what you attend to consistently, right? So back to the power of attention. So if you're curious in this way every day, then your life really starts to change. Because then if you're curious in this way every day, then what starts to happen is you start to become curious in this way every moment. And as you're curious in this way every moment, then there's no way for the old habits to continue in the same way. And you start to connect to your real authentic power. So, I will mention here, I think most of you who are here live, you probably know about this already, but I'll mention it just in case you don't. And for people who watch this far on YouTube who don't know, I did recently uh, publish a free course. It's a short, very accessible course on self-awareness, which um, has one short lesson and then a guided audio and a downloadable um, printable workbook that's super simple and by design, that's all there to support you in exploring in this way so that you can change your life. So if you haven't already gotten that, I encourage you to do so. It's free and it's at joeylott.com/SA for self-awareness. And on YouTube, I'll put the link in the description. And I think that that's in terms of the rules, that's the only rule that I'm going to cover today because I think that's plenty. But I mean, because the truth is, honestly, if you only worked with that one rule, just the one thing, just this law of attention, if you were just curious about it, if you just explored it uh, in this way or in some similar way that works for you consistently, you would discover so much peace, clarity, empowerment, happiness, contentment, freedom. All of that is really available just through this a sincere exploration of this one principle because it will reveal to you how you actually are choosing, albeit largely unconsciously, your own experience. It will reveal to you how you can begin to consciously shift that. And even deeper than that, it points you to discover with greater clarity who you are in totality, not just the parts of yourself that you've identified as. You know, most of us have identified as this conscious mind part of uh, this individual entity that we think we are, which is embodied in this one particular human form, which was born at a particular time and which is destined to die. And that's how we think of ourselves. And as you without becoming philosophical or reading the Vedas or getting caught up in Neo-Advaita or any of this other stuff, which for most people just becomes more burden, more mental garbage, more leads to more self-imposed social level rules, how I should be, how I should behave, how I should think. I'm gonna, uh, I will stop using personal pronouns. So it's now there's no longer I, there's here it is seen that and so forth and so on. It just becomes this nonsensical, burdensome hell. But instead, just by being curious about your own experience, just receiving the breath, just having that intention uh, and then observing how it is that this power of attention is actually operating in your life and how you are working with it can reveal to you so much, and in a way that is gentle, pleasant, uh, and can allow you also to maybe even I'm trying to think of the right word here. I was going to say live a more comfortable life. In a certain way, that's true, although it might not necessarily be your present idea of comfort. You can be far more at ease within yourself. You can experience real peace. All of that's available just through observation, self-observation, and inquiry into this one principle, and working with self-awareness. So I'm going to leave it at that. Just one more reminder, if you haven't yet gotten the access to the self-awareness course, I, I encourage you to get it. And like I said, I'll put the link on in the description on YouTube. And so for those who are here live, if you have any questions or anything that you'd like me to address, I'm happy to do that. You can put those in the chat. And then once I've gone through all those, we'll wrap up for today. So let me just open up the chat here and see if there's anything in here. Uh, to the person who wrote, "In this moment, I'm failing, I'm drowning, I'm not succeeding, fear." I'm curious uh, for an update because that was almost an hour ago. So, um, how has that shifted for you with the exploration? All right, so here's a slightly long one. It says, recently I've been thinking in this way that for the things I want, that the same witness who watched me suffer can witness me succeeding and living the life I want. That it's not so far away. It's just needs me to see it. But there is the question of how, which I may just need to trust. And but I feel like I need this clarity and I'm lost in how to be and what to do day to day until it manifests. Any advice? And is that starting point I've been thinking from beneficial? Um, well, if you find it useful, then I would say it's useful. Um, and what I recommend is to so the witness, the nature of the witness is to witness. Seems obvious. Uh, so I mean, as far as it goes, your insight is accurate. I mean, the witness is the witness witnesses. So the witness, uh, whether whatever it is that's occurring, the witness witnesses that, regardless of whether you call that suffering or succeeding or whatever, the witness is witnessing that. It's not involved, doesn't get involved. So, uh, so, uh, then the question would be, so at a physical, material, social level, you have habits, w which you have used trying to achieve something and you have not to your satisfaction. So you could continue to try to function from there, but and maintain this divide of there's a witness who's uninvolved, and then there's this separate entity who is, this person who's just going to try harder. But what I propose is that you can get far more leverage when you work with the spiritual principles, such as the law of attention. So uh, I really cannot overstate how powerful this one principle is. It's always operating and it's governing your experience, whether you're aware of it or not. You're experiencing what it is that you put your attention on and what you, so if there are things, you say suffer, so can watch me suffer. If so that suggests that you have perceived yourself to be suffering. So then uh notice when you are suffering, where is your attention? And that's not what you want. But most people stay stuck there because they don't recognize what's actually going on. They don't know how they're creating their experience through attention, and they don't know how to change that, which I've attempted to give the give uh pretty much everything that's needed here in this talk today. So if you so number one is uh what do you want? So you know what you don't want. You call that suffering. And the habit is to just keep going back to that. And when you say living the life I want, succeeding in living the life that I want, you have some idea of what that is, but I can virtually guarantee that the vast majority of that is not actually what you want. It's a reaction to what you don't want. It's it's basically just what I what I want is the opposite of what I don't want. What I want, what I call succeeding, is not suffering. And so as long as it remains like that, which it is for most people, even if they have some idea, they say, well, me succeeding and living the life that I want involves, me having and I'm not suggesting this is true for you, but for a lot of people, like, oh, it means me having the house and having the car and having the spouse and, you I'm no longer working the stupid corporate job and I'm traveling and I'm doing okay. Interesting. It's a step in the right direction, but underneath that, for most people, it's really just it's like it's still a reaction to the suffering because they think this is the balm that will soothe the suffering. If I can just have all these things, then I'll no longer suffer. Then I'll no longer experience that unpleasantness that I was calling suffering. So, like I said, it's a step in the right direction. However, uh, as long as it stays in that zone, which is still like a limbo zone, it's an intermediate zone. It's not fully what you want. It's mostly a reaction to what you don't want, even though it's dressed up as what you want. Then you stay stuck, mostly still feeling anxious about the suffering. So instead, I recommend developing greater clarity and energizing what it is that you do want by putting attention on it every day. And and do that with this with an open mind so that you're inviting all parts of yourself to express so that you can get full clarity about what you actually want, which that clarity will evolve over time. It starts out, you think, I want this. And as you continue to work with that, it evolves and you'll get more and more and more clarity about it. As you do that, then through the power of attention, what you want gets more and more energy, becomes more substantial. And what you don't want is transformed or transmuted because everything is energy. So as the energy is withdrawn from what you don't want, it's transformed into what you do want as long as you consistently put attention on what you do want. Um, so I would my recommendation is to work with the things that I suggested today. If you do that consistently, uh, namely every day asking, what do I want? And in an uncensored fashion, writing the answer and working with breath awareness and or the active relaxation method in order to help yourself cultivate the skill of receiving or welcoming, because you need both. Because as I said today, and this the lesson today is very subtle, so it's worth going through multiple times, because as you work with these suggestions, it's going to produce movement. It begins that transformation. That's just how it works. There's no other way. It's not a matter of whether you believe in it or not. It just works. But as long as you're still operating out of the old paradigm, what happens is the tendency is as soon as that movement starts to occur, your nervous system registers it as threats, whether it's because of your own thoughts, feelings, emotions, sensations, memories, mental images, projections into the future, whatever it might be, or it could be things that manifest around you. And however that occurs, the tendency is to register that as a threat and to have attention go to trying to solve the problem instead of attention on what you want. And then because the what you want is still in a nascent form, it's vulnerable and is it can't survive. And so then you have to start over again. And so you make very little progress in this way. So uh, instead, what I'm suggesting is that it's really important to cultivate this ability to receive, because this allows you to know that everything that's happening is for your greatest good. It is a fulfillment of your intention. If you have the intention, this is what I want, then you next are just to receive it. And whatever it is that comes up, trust that that's part of it. It has to be revealed, released, cleared, let go of. But if instead you cling to it, you react to it, you become fearful of it, then your attention is no longer on what you want. So, so the key is to number one, know what you want. Number two, stay with it. Not in a forceful way, but in a very open, gentle way. So that's why I recommend something like breath awareness, because you don't you don't create through force. Certainly you don't create what you want through force, and you can't sustain what you want through force. It's through intention and receptivity. So hopefully that's clear. Um, yeah. So to the person who says, do members also have access to this short workshop? Yes, I've been emailing about it. I mean, you have to register for it all the same, but but once you do, then it will show up in your library. So you just go to joeylott.com/SA, the letter S, the letter A for self-awareness. And once you go through the few steps there, then it will show up in your library. Okay, I'm glad to the person I asked the question said this talk has addressed my concerns. Good. Um, good. Uh, Somebody says, why is it scary to feel only the frequency of what we want? Well, like I was describing, when you so so you have so there's a couple of answers is this that go together. So one is, uh, as I said already, that change your nervous system, uh, life in general has a uh, uh, quality to it which resists change. And there are uh, three qualities which govern creation. Uh, there's the there's they're called sattva, rajo, tamo. Uh, Sattva is the pure idea. Rajo is the activity. Tamo is the solidification, or the manifestation. So Earth is very tamo because it's very has uh, a lot of it's very dense, and so and each of these qualities have properties, and tamo, being dense and solidified, resists change. So once something so tamo is habit. Once something is habitual, it's tamo. It's unconscious. And uh, it resists change, which is a built-in feature. It's not a problem. We want that because if that wasn't so, there would be no, it would be total chaos. You could not have, there would be no way to, uh, I mean, just take a simple example. I mean, everything would be total chaos. But I mean, for example, you wouldn't know who you were as a person, because there would be no sense of any kind of stability there. Uh, you wouldn't have a stable home. You wouldn't have anything that you considered to be yours wouldn't be stable. It would always, you couldn't have any, you couldn't hold on to anything. There would be no money that you could have. You couldn't have any food. Nothing would be stable at all. It's like if there was a car, you'd get in the car, it would melt, it would dissolve, it would turn into an elephant. I mean, it would be chaos. So the resistance to change is, as I say, it's a built-in feature, and it's desirable, especially when what has been manifest is what you want. But uh, this poses us a challenge when we want change, because uh, we have to go through, we have to dissolve what is already there in order to bring about that change. And it has already in it this resistance to that change. So when we dissolve it, when it begins, that change begins, then so that's one one aspect of the answer, is just that it has inherent resistance to it. Second piece of this, second part of the answer, which is connected to the first part, is that as that change is occurring, your nervous system registers that change and tends to perceive that change as a threat, because we're largely operating on unconsciously, which again is by design, is not bad. You don't want to have to consciously operate all of the functions of your body, for example. So the fact that it can happen unconsciously is advantageous. But when that change starts to happen, more of that information starts to become conscious, which is not a problem, but it's a lot of information which your nervous system is likely to register as a threat. So that would be another reason why you would perceive it as scary. Uh, and this is also why something like breath awareness is so useful because it helps you just to be present. So just to acknowledge, okay, there's change happening, movement happening, reaction happening. If there's something that's needed, if you're standing in the middle of the road and there's a bus coming down the road and you don't want to get hit by the bus, it's good and appropriate and right that you should step out of the way of the bus. If the house is on fire, it's good and appropriate if you want to survive that you should get out of the house. So take action where it's appropriate and aligned with what you want. But what but what happens a lot of the time is that there's change occurring, which is releasing things. They're coming up into conscious awareness, and we perceive them as sensations, feelings, emotions, mental images, thoughts, memories, all this kind of stuff, and we get spooked. And then we start running around like a chicken with its head cut off. So like I got to do something, anything, or we're like Chicken Little. The sky is falling. The sky is falling. I got to do something. I got to go to the king and alert the king. Everybody come with me. We got to alert the king. We got to take action. We got to be busy. And so a lot of our lives are like that. It's very reactive. And when we're reacting, then we're signaling to our nervous system, I'm not safe. So whatever, so we just go back to the old habits. So, uh, in contrast to that, when you choose to be aware, so if you choose something like breath awareness or active relaxation, then you're signaling to your nervous system, I'm safe. There's things happening, there's change occurring, there's thoughts, there's sensations. I'm safe. More mental images, more thoughts, more sensations. I'm safe. Whatever is going on, I'm safe. And this allows for that change to continue. And eventually, what happens is that the old habit is replaced with the new habit. So then that new habit becomes unconscious and solidified and dense. And if the new habit is a useful habit, one that works well for you, then that's a good thing because then that will resist change. And it will become it because it's unconscious, you don't have to think about it, it's just working for you. Somebody says, I can see that I lose regarding the putting attention on what I don't want. I can see that I lose faith, patience, and trust when it comes to wanting a relationship. This is shifting for me as I have brought ease, fun, and curiosity into the days I go on. Good. Yeah. And if you also consider that, like I said, the this ongoing exploration uh, of what do I really want, inviting all of yourself to the party to really uh, bring more clarity and more wholeness to your understanding of what you want, a maturity of that of the understanding of what you want will also really support that because in combination with, of course, as I said, the uh, cultivating also the skill of welcoming and allowing and receiving, because then you everything starts to become feedback. You go on a date and something happens that your nervous system registers, and before maybe you would react to that one way or the other. Uh, and it would put you right back into the old habits, the old patterns, whatever those are. And through the increased clarity and the increased capacity for welcoming, then what happens is it's just feedback, and you just receive it, and then you, as usual, you ask yourself, okay, and what do I really want? And you trust in the clarity that you receive from that. And that will just continue to guide you and refine that clarity for you so that you'll just find that you're more and more you're experiencing exactly what it is that you do want. So, and I'm glad to hear that. All right. Seems like that's all for today. So, thank you to all of you. Blessings to you all. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and I will see you next time. Take care. Bye for now.